Hi, this is Eric, and I'm back with a video. It's Sunday evening, July 13th, and I wanted to talk about kind of a general topic. You know, there's been a lot of talk recently about the what's going on in Ukraine, and is Trump in or is he out? And you know, they're gonna send weapons. No, they're washing their hands of it, and if the Ukrainians and the Russians can't decide what they're going to do, then Trump is just going to wash his hands of it. That was what we heard a couple of months ago, and now it sounds like they're going all in. And because Trump is very, very, he's very disappointed and he's very unhappy with Russia because he did his old New York real estate shyster art of the deal shtick on Putin, and apparently Putin said, yes, thank you very much. Yes, I really appreciate your offer, but I think we'll just keep doing what we're doing. Thank you very much." And of course, Trump, is enraged because he thought that he could bully Vladimir Putin, who, if Vladimir Putin seriously wanted to, make short work of the United States with their missile technology, it would be over in a minute. Maybe not a minute, maybe 15 times longer than a minute, 15 minutes. Anyway, so we got Ukraine. They're talking about, Gaza. We're talking about Israel. We're talking about Taiwan, and they're very upset that the fact that they don't have enough weapons to win in Ukraine and Gaza and in Taiwan. But now we've got they're stirring up trouble in Azerbaijan, and there's in Armenia, and so there's trouble all over the place. So this reminded me of like when I grew up during the 1950s, and I guess I've always had a penchant for geopolitics because there are a couple of cartoons that I really appreciated. There's like two lines I'm going to offer you today. The first one was there was a cartoon series called Rocky and Bullwinkle, Rocky the Flying Squirrel and Bullwinkle the Moose. And in that series, they had the two Russian evil people, Boris Badenov and Natasha, and they spoke with a Russian accent, and so now Boris Badenov is a takeoff on an opera that was called Boris Godunov, but anyway, that was called Boris Badenov. And at one point, Rocky is talking with Bullwinkle, and the issue of military intelligence comes up. Like the Department of there's a department, actually. There's a CIA, which is the Central Intelligence Agency, and there's also in one of the 16 or 17 intelligence agencies is called the Defense Intelligence Agency, the DIA, or U.S. Military Intelligence. So Rocky says to Bullwinkle, "Military intelligence, isn't that a contradiction in terms?" And even then, as like a 10-year-old, I thought it was really funny. Okay, so that was one thing, and then there was another one. There was this comedian in the 1950s named Mort Saul, and he had a very dry sense of humor. He was very funny, and he told this story one time, which I've always remembered, where he said, President Eisenhower, who was the president at that time, had a big globe in the White House, the Oval Office, and this globe had all the trouble spots in the world marked with a black spot. It was a big black globe. So I thought that's really funny because, here we are, and it looks like we still have a big black globe. So what I thought I would do to put all these wars that are going on in context was, first of all, I thought, okay, how many times has the United States actually been involved in overseas operations? So here's a book that I have that you can get it. It's online actually, It's called Killing Hope, U.S. Military and CIA Intervention Since World War II. And you kind of go through this. This I got it online, actually. And here you can see it. They're talking about Killing Hope, U.S. military and CIA intervention since World War II. William Blum. William Blum was a CIA and State Department consultant. And one of the reasons why, when I do research on things, people say, "Oh, you're just a Putin puppet," But no, actually, what I like to do is I like to go to sources of people who are actually in the system, and realize, the moral bankruptcy of it, and they talk about it. So William Blum is one of those people, and Larry Johnson used to work for the CIA, and he's active now. He's got a website called Sonar 21, and I'm on his mailing list, and he has a lot of good stuff. And I feel like his analysis is really quite accurate and commendable from what I can tell. So let's see. It says the last major revision of this book appeared in 1995. So this is old, 1995. We're talking about what? 1995, 2005, 2015, 30 years ago. And so what I did was I went to the back. So he has this thing called, where is it? He's got a lot of really interesting things here. Is the United States against terrorism? Oh boy, that would be an interesting article to read. There's another one. If you can see it here, the Imperial Mafia. It's an interesting article. Let's see what we got. Here's a good one. This is a really, really good one. Speaking of, the evil empire, Russia. So this is called The Cold War is Over, Long Live the Cold War. They were writing this. So you see, Russia had this stupid idea of ending the Cold War. This is Gorbachev. He ended the Cold War by allowing the Soviet Union to collapse, which caused enormous problems for Russian people. They said at one point, I think 80% of the population of the Russian Federation was living in poverty. You had professionals who had great careers and everything. They lost everything. Andrei Martyanov, who's another expert that I listen to, is excellent, and he was a Soviet naval officer. And his career, not only did his career fall apart, but he claims that his life was actually in danger. So he came to the United States. He's been living here ever since. But he also, even though he feels like America kind of saved him from that era, he fully understands the limitations that Russia has right now. So, but this is only since World War II. So what I did was I did some searching, and I'm going to be posting this, beneath this video. So I did some searching, and I first did a search for U.S. interventions since the total U.S. interventions abroad, and there's something called the Congressional Research Service. So we're not talking about the Russian Congress or the Chinese Congress. We're talking about the United States Congress. And it was written by the chief librarian or something of the U.S. Congress. And it's the job of that person to document things. So this person, it's a woman, posted an article called U.S. Interventions. Let's see if I can find it here. Let's see, it's called Instances of Use of United States Armed Forces Abroad from 1798 until 2023. So there you go. That's a much more updated version. So what I did was, so I've included a link to that, and then what happened was, my first attempt at this was to go to my AI sources. So I asked DeepSeek, which is the Chinese version. I don't like ChatGPT so much because it's based on Google, and Google, we know that I've done this many times where Google just doesn't report things. They deliberately censor things. They suppress stuff. It goes down the memory hole of the internet because they just don't publish stuff. So usually, if I'm going to do something, I'll go to like a Yandex, because the Yandex browser was developed by the Russians. So it's very similar to Google, but it's not based on the Google algorithm. So you often get quite different, very revealing citations. So in any case, so I went to ChatGPT and I just asked the question. This is before I found this congressional research thing. I asked the question, how many interventions has the United States actually been involved in since inception? And the answer that it came up with was, well, we don't want to make any mistakes, so we're just going to have to pass on answering your question. Wow, I mean, that's pretty amazing. So then I thought, okay, who else can I ask? I asked, who else did I ask? I think it was in Brave. I asked the Brave browser. I think it was that, and I asked them the same question. They said, "Well, we really don't want to get into that." So I thought, okay, that's interesting. So then I thought, okay, what's next? What can I where can I go? Is there any is there any intelligence anywhere, artificial or otherwise, that will give me an answer to this question? I thought, oh, okay, there's Grok, because Grok is Elon Musk's AI engine, and we've been hearing some criticism of Grok because he's been publishing some stuff. Grok published it, not Elon Musk, but the algorithm apparently, publishes some things that are rather, shall we say, controversial, to say the least. But I asked the same question, and Grok actually gave me a reasonable answer. But then I did some more research on my own, and so I actually dug up. This was a Yandex search, instances of U.S. intervention abroad, and I came up with this article from the Congressional Research Service. So this is an official U.S. government document. And I'll post the answer that I got that, and then now I've got hard evidence, so DeepSeek cannot, say, oh, we just don't know, okay, DeepSeek, here's a U.S. government document. Now you read through this, and you count, because there were so many citations again and again and again that I have to admit that I lost count, because it's the writing it's like single spaced, and everything is really hard for me to read to get an accurate number. But because it is intelligent, more intelligent than me, presumably, they were actually able to decide all this stuff. So they said, well, we've looked at this document, and it appears that there have been 400 uses of the U.S. military overseas since 1798. And then I said, well, what about since World War II? And they said, well, and I think this is right. They said, let's see if I can find it here. Just a second. Where is it? I don't know if I can go between tabs here while I'm recording a video. I can't do it. But I think it said there's actually been, it says, I asked the question, what about between 1945 and July 2025? And the answer came up, well, we actually haven't gotten that far yet, but we know they cited the Houthis, and they said, it looks like there's been 350 interventions. So is there a pattern here? How many, I live in Thailand, and now Thailand has a population of about 60 million. It's about 1/5 of the number of people in the United States. and a little bit less. But if I asked how many times has Thailand intervened in the Caribbean and Africa and all these places, the answer would be very, very, very few. But for some reason, the United States, is way, way up there. Then you could say, well, what about those Soviets? And so one of the really weird things about this whole situation is that Trump is very angry with Russia because he's not complying with American demands to succumb to U.S. policy. Now, Hillary Clinton famously said that the Chinese, and specifically said the Chinese are engaging in imperialistic ventures, and they also, and the U.S. is also saying we have to counter Russian influence in Africa. So the question there is, well, how do the Africans feel about all this stuff? And you listen to somebody like Traore, who was, I think he's the head of Burkina Faso, and he got rid of a French puppet government, and now he's the head of it. And they got the French to just get the hell out of Africa because the French were milking them for centuries. And when people when the West says, oh, the Russians, they're so bad, the Africans say, are you kidding? When we were struggling to get free of Western colonialism, guess who was helping us? It was the Soviet Union that was helping us. So when the United States, has this record of literally hundreds of military interventions all over the world, and I did another question. Again, I think it was in Yandex, asking about, let's see if I can find this here. Hold on just a second. Where is it? Instances of use. Let's see. Oh, yeah, this is a good one. The U.S. government assassination plots from 1949 to 2024. That's a pretty interesting question. The thing is, I think Jesus said, you ask the question, ask and ye shall find, something like that. And there was another one here. Well, you get the point. Let's see. This is yeah. You can ask how many list of assassinations by the United States. This is Wikipedia, and these were successful assassinations. So you had this is between 1943 and 2025. So I guess they think they probably talk about let's see, 2023. I don't see Soleimani in here. He was the most popular general in Iran. So you got these, and then here's another one: planned but unexecuted assassinations. Fidel Castro, Patrice Lumumba, well, he was assassinated. Rafael Trujillo, Ngo Diem, he was assassinated. Rene Schneider, he was the commander-in-chief of the Chilean army before Pinochet got rid of him and Allende. So it's funny that in Wikipedia they cite Lumumba, Trujillo, Ngo Diem, Rene Schneider, and Sukarno, the president of Indonesia. All those people, they were assassinated, actually. They don't even talk about Allende. Well, I guess the U.S. didn't do in Allende specifically. They hired, thugs in the Chilean military to do that. But anyway, that's the kind of thing that I thought it would be useful to raise this issue, because unless it's like, if you have a crazy uncle or something, a crazy relative who's always getting into trouble, and if you look at what they're doing, if you say, oh, they did that, it's a problem, and then something else happens, that problem. You have to look at the whole picture. And what we see with the whole picture is that if we're talking about a phenomenon that has been going on since 1798, is there a pattern here? That is the issue. And as I've said, I'm trying to raise this topic as a theme, that our country we were raised with the idea of freedom and democracy, but it's really been something quite different. And it's been really, a quite horrific record that we've been responsible for. And the country that we really thought we had and what we wanted to have, just hasn't happened. Granted, there was a period of time after World War II when the United States was really preeminent in the world. And because of that, it was able to create a very good middle class. But since 1970 or so, that middle class has been falling. And now, the literacy rate is down to 70%, not 90 plus that it was in the 1950s. And the life expectancy is falling. The poverty rate is rising. The homelessness is a serious problem. Pollution is still a serious problem. So, and of course, our infrastructure is crumbling. The train system is decades behind what you can see in Russia or China, especially China. So there's a lot of work to be done here. And if I were president of the United States, I would bring all those troops home, save all that money on those military bases overseas, which are basically things used to bully people, and say, hey, let's build a really good train system. Let's upgrade the educational system to improve not just mathematics and science, which is needed for a technological world that we're in right now, but critical thinking, so that our citizens are able to make rational decisions, and so that they learn not to be fooled. I brought up in an earlier video the fact that you had quite intelligent people falling for Trump, or before that falling for Obama. These are great people whom I admire, but for some reason I'm very skeptical, because I see things in this broad historical context, and I also listen to what they say carefully based on that context. So when you had, in the case of Obama, for example, he was asked in a debate in 2008 by John McCain. John McCain was the one who was talking about bomb, Iran, ha, ha, ha. Well, that was in 2008. Trump finally got around to bombing Iran. And what good is that doing us? Not much good at all, obviously. But in response to that accusation that Obama had against John McCain, John McCain had actually said, you're the kind of person, you're planning to attack Pakistan. And Obama at that time, this was in August of 2008, he said, John, you're so irresponsible. You're talking about bombing Iran. But in my case, before we would engage in any kind of military action in Pakistan, we would do our very best to solve this problem diplomatically. And guess what? Obama won the election, and within like a week, he was bombing Pakistan. and he was using drone warfare. This is back in Obama's time. So, and of course, I knew that he was lying. Well, why did I know he was lying? Because, for one thing, he came out of nowhere. He had a very thin resume. He was somebody he was like a persona that was cooked up. But what was the real giveaway was that he presented himself as being this cool African-American community organizer and, this kind of thing. But the reality is that his mother had ties to the CIA. His father, this was Wayne Madsen, was a investigative journalist. He discovered that Obama, his father, was part of a student movement in Kenya that was created in order to counteract a legitimate student movement in Kenya. And because he was successful at creating this AstroTurf, this fake student movement, he ended up in Hawaii, and that's where he met Obama's mother. And then whatever happened, then she ends up in Indonesia, and she's living with this other guy now. And there's a massacre of 1 million people, probably 500,000 to 1 million people in Indonesia to overthrow the anti-colonialist government of Indonesia. So Obama has, his origins are very questionable. And it turns out after he graduated from Harvard University, oh, by the way, he was the editor of the Harvard Law Review, but he never wrote an article for it. So that's another, questionable factor. And then after he graduated, he got a job working for something, it was like Business Systems. I don't remember exactly what the name was, but he went to Pakistan and he kind of disappeared for a while. So he was basically on the CIA payroll, pretty clearly. So it was like a Manchurian candidate. All these presidents, they're essentially Manchurian candidates. They're created and they are foisted on the American public. Anybody who's halfway decent, like Bernie Sanders or Dennis Kucinich or Jesse Jackson or Henry Wallace, these are people who represented the real heart and soul of the Democratic Party. They are shoved aside. So, and of course, if you really question the system, like JFK or Robert Kennedy, his brother, you're not just simply brushed aside; you're shot aside. So that's our system, and we really have to come to grips with that. I'll just say in closing that after 9/11. That was another situation which I immediately could tell there's something really, really fishy about that. And there have been many people who've done thorough research on that from many, many angles. But there was one woman named Catherine Austin Fitz, and she was a conservative Republican. She was working in the George Bush administration, the father, George H.W. Bush administration. She had been an investment banker for Dillon Reed. So she had, really solid conservative credentials. And yet when she went to work for the government in the Department of Health and Human Services, I think it was. It was Department of Housing and Urban Development. That's what it was. And she found massive corruption going on there. She blew the whistle on it, and it destroyed her career in the government. So if you try, it doesn't matter whether you're a liberal or a conservative, whoever you are, if you go against the criminal underground, basically, that is running things behind the scenes, you're going to get yourself into trouble. So that's the long and the short of it. But what she said was, after 9/11, she said, if we can face it, God can fix it. And that is the question. Can the American people truly face the horror of the system that we're living under? And can we build a movement that can face these issues and tackle them and get the country to, right itself, because it's just gone down a really dark path. That's what I got to say on this. So again, thank you very much for listening. Again, I'll post links where you can sign up or send or make a contribution, whatever. It really helps. It's not like it's going to make or break my my financial situation, but it does help me, and especially because I'm thinking of doing more travel, and I have travel expenses, and that can add up, and I'm living on a pension, so if you'd like to help out, that would be great, or you can buy a T-shirt. So that's what I have to say today, and thanks a lot, and I'll talk to you soon.